Good afternoon and welcome to this, the Minds and Money webinar, Pitching Tips for Exploration Companies, How to Craft Your Pitch to Capture Investors' Attention. I'm Mike Gill, Global Head of Mining at Minds and Money, and I'm your host for today's webinar. Before we delve into today's conversation and go through the questions, I'd like to cover off a couple of the housekeeping items. Firstly, this webinar has been recorded and we will be emailing a copy of the recording out to the registrants afterwards. So if you do need to drop off at any time, don't worry, you will receive the rest of the conversation in your inbox tomorrow. The session is designed to be interactive, so we welcome any questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but you're welcome to ask questions as we go through the session. To ask questions, please use the questions tab in the GoToWebinar panel. So that's the questions tab in the GoToWebinar panel. If you experience any issues with the sound, we recommend that you exit the webinar and log back in. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Matt. So Matthew Gill, he will be our guest speaker for today. Matthew Gill is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of White Rock Minerals. He's a mining engineer with over 35 years experience, with strong technical, operational and executive management background. Having worked in roles ranging from underground miner, supervisor, department head and site operations manager through to CEO and managing director, which he is now of White Rock Minerals. Matt's worked in Papua New Guinea, India, Ghana, Bolivia. Matt is also the winner of the 2018 London Mining Pitch Battle, which is why we're speaking to him today. And I'd like to start off by just saying hello to you, Matt.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, no problem. I think the last time we called up was at PDAC in Toronto, and I hope you're somewhere a little bit warmer than that.
Yes, I enjoyed the balmy -10 degrees.
I thought it was lower than that. I think it dropped to -20 in the evening, but maybe that's living in Hong Kong too long.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to the first question. Matt, the title of today's presentation is all about how you pitch. How do you pitch to investors? So let's start it off with, can you provide a short description of what you think makes a great exploration pitch?
Yeah, I mean, that's the essence, and a really good question. You know, for a lot of people in my role, we're technically based. As you mentioned, I'm a mining engineer. So I think one of the greatest lessons I've learned is to keep it as simple and as clear as you can. But having said that, if it's too simple, you will miss maybe some of the key points, because after all, mining, you know, does have that component of technical language to it. So my brief comment would be, keep it short. None of this is rocket science. Keep it short, try and keep it clear, and try and make, you know, a few points, not 20. Yeah,
makes sense. I guess to introduce the narrative of the conversation, as I said initially, Matt won the Minds and Money London Global Pitch Battle, which was no mean feat, Matt, because you know, we had regional days dealing with Australia, North America, Europe and Africa, in which you had to qualify through that stage. And then we had a finalist, and there was some stiff competition: Cabral Gold, Mako Gold, Xanadu Mines and Nevada Exploration, and you were pitching in front of Baker Steel, First State Investments, Sprott and Peel Hunt. So it was definitely a triumph for you in that respect. So I guess, I mean, moving on to that, how do you, what kind of, you mentioned the highlights. How do you highlight the 3 or 4 things you want to get across to the judges and the audience?
Yeah, again, another good question. So, you know, if we talked about the London example, you've got to, I try and put myself in the seat of the audience that I'm talking to, if that's the conference pitch, or if it was London, you know, the panelists, the financial market panelists that you mentioned, Baker Steel and Sprott, etc. So I think knowing your audience is critical, because then that helps guide the language that you use, coming back to my first point, whether it should be and can be technical, or whether it needs to be at a higher level. So I think knowing the audience, why you're there, guides then on the points that you want to make. We all believe when we're pitching our story, we believe in our projects. So I think knowing the audience, working out the language that you're going to use. I found it very interesting. I've got a 10-minute presentation that I use at Minds and Money, and I used at PDAC, etc. And for instance, the London pitch battle, I had 3 minutes, and it really focused my mind to trim down, the slides down to 3 minutes worth. And when I'd finished that, I sat back and I thought, well, maybe next time, even if I get 10 minutes, if I can do it in 3, I should do it in 3. I shouldn't have my pitch or my presentation expand to fill the available time. So I think, to come back to the question, the important points are knowing the audience, because that guides the language. You'll understand if they're retail, if they're family office, if they're technical, if they're private equity. And if it's a mix, then you probably need to have a bit of a mix of technical and more general.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, if I was to say to you, you're pitching in Minds and Money London, Minds and Money Hong Kong, generally institutional, sophisticated investors, if we compare that, juxtapose that to pitching in, say, example, Vancouver and Perth, how would you adopt the changes over that 3-minute pitch?
So going to the question, it was, my presentations are often informed. I sit in on a lot of other companies' presentations, so I think you learn what works and what doesn't by looking at what your peers do. I think that's a valuable lesson, not just learning about the projects, but how they present. And I've also sat in on financial market analyst talks, like Rick Rule, like Mr. Burridge from Baker Steel, so that you also understand their language. The best guide I got, in fact, was listening to Bert from Denham Capital, and my London pitch was 3 Ps: projects, people, and proposition. And by that last one, I mean investment proposition. And generally, if you can cover the projects, the people, so the board and management that are going to be handling the investors' money, and then why the audience should invest in that company, because they have choice. There are many companies they could choose from. I think those 3 Ps was quite a nice guide for me, and it worked in that scenario in London.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I remember hearing a previous US president scriptwriter, speechwriter, who mentioned that he would never include more than 3 numbers or 3 metrics in a speech, on the basis that, if you covered off the fundamentals, people only tended to take away certain parts of the information. So that definitely makes sense. Let's move on to question. Yeah, go on, Matt. Did you want to say?
Yeah, Mike, I was just going to say the other thing is, at the end of the day, whether you've got 3 minutes or 10 minutes, I mean, 15 minutes is too long. A listener will just forget what you've said at the beginning. At the end of the day, you're really trying to paint a story, get their interest, and then get them to either come and see you afterwards or email you or go on the website. You can't hope to achieve everything in the presentation, in the pitch, but if you whet their appetite enough, hopefully there's a follow-up. I think that's probably the key. You're not going to achieve I mean, if they go and buy on market straight after a presentation, you've done exceptionally well. In my experience, that's pretty rare.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a question here. The first question coming in from Chris from Perth, and he says, has this affected the way you pitch within a meeting? So I guess framing that, he's saying, look, have you learned anything by shortening it to 3 minutes? Is that something you would pitch in a meeting? Is it similar?
Again, it depends on the audience. If it's a board meeting, you will have normally a range of styles. Some people just want the conclusions. Some people want to be led through the thought process to the conclusions. So again, you need to know the audience and why you're there and what they're there to listen to. And then you need to craft your pitch, I think, accordingly. If you've got a bunch of engineers in the room, they just really want the answers. if you've got a bunch of philosophers, they probably want to understand the reasoning and thinking before you get to the answer. So I do really stress understanding the audience and the purpose for the meeting will help guide then what you say and the language that you use.
Excellent. Well, I mean, I guess leading on from that point, once you've understood who the audience are, and you're obviously very well prepared for in that respect, how do you make it compelling? This is a question for you. How do you communicate and make it compelling to the audience of potential investors?
Yeah, again, look, a really good question. I mean, I'm having this discussion as we speak with a major shareholder. For probably the last year, up until the end of last year, one of the traditional ways that a company would suggest that there's a compelling investment proposition would be to put up a table of your peers and show the undervalued nature. Generally, you only use these graphs if you're undervalued compared to your peers, whether that's by market capitalisation or enterprise value. That is not a bad way of showing the relative discrepancy between you and other companies, because at the end of the day, the investor could pick any number of other companies. So if they can see a gap between your value and someone else's value, then they might think there's a re-rating opportunity. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is to show the technical merits of the project, whether it's the exploration potential, whether it's the fantastic drill hole results you've been getting. And then the third way is if you've been lucky enough to get some broker coverage, you know, some independent research reports. So there's probably three different lenses through which you hope an investor can see the opportunity. I always say, you know, I'm a mining engineer, you know, please listen to what I say, but please go away and do your own homework and have a look at what I'm saying to satisfy, you know, the investor's own questions. But you give them some of the ammunition with which they can then look at. I think it's important for us to do that to help the investor.
Yeah, and I think that covers it. That summarises nicely from the technical side. You need to speak to different audiences and make sure you cover off those points. I know, Matt, when we discussed this before, you were keen not to give away too many of your highlights, and because you obviously want to continue to win these pitch battles and get as much exposure as you can. But what about the fish? We've got to mention the fish. Do you want to talk through that part of your presentation?
Yeah, so look, yeah, for the audience, as I said, I'm a mining engineer, happy to share, but clearly, you know, an investor relations consultant would charge, you know, a lot of money for this advice, but I look more than happy to do it. I think it's the great thing about the mining industry. One of the things, and I mentioned it earlier, is I often try and empathise with the investor. You can imagine day two of a long conference, it's in the afternoon, they've just had a big lunch, they're sitting there listening to, you know, pitch number 20. That takes a bit of stamina, and if you just rattle off the same old in the same form, you're probably not going to resonate. So I do, without belittling the situation, do try and introduce a little bit of humour. And I find, I mean, that's risky. You can die on stage. So you want to be careful in doing it. And to give you an example, White Rock has two projects, one in Australia and one in Alaska. And so I just talk about my two children who you are supposed to love equally. And people get that straight away, that, you know, there's a reality in there. To your reference, Mike, in the London pitch battle, I knew that Rick Rule was one of the panellists. And I knew that he loved the word scalability, i.e. a project that has scale or the ability to grow. And so I just worked that into my presentation where I had the photo of the side of a fish with a knife. And I just had the question, I just posed the question, is it scalable? And, you know, the audience had a little chuckle, which was good, means they were still alive. And certainly, and it was deliberate. I mean, unashamedly pitched at Rick Rule, who, you know, at the end of it, you know, certainly voted in favour of my talk. So I do try and weave in a bit of colour. Otherwise, it can be, very hard, I think, on an investor to remember and then have any energy to go and follow up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a running theme, really. I mean, I interviewed Peter from Mako Gold in Zava earlier in the year, and he said, look, he talks about the Mako shark and how their self-behaviour, and he talks about the synergy in regards to how that particular shark behaves with their, with his management team. And again, it was an interesting part. It's 3 minutes of serious pitching with some serious judges, but you do have to engage the audience. So I think, amongst the people who've been successful, either winning or getting to the final, that's definitely been a common theme. So what about the competition? I've just got a message here from Simon in Singapore saying, is there gentle competition? Is there friendly competition between the companies when you're going into the final? Is there a little bit of good old-fashioned banter?
Yeah, look, I touched on it before. I've been in the mining industry for quite a while, and one of the good things is we don't necessarily compete, IP, market. It's a small industry. I think the camaraderie is great. These pitch battles, if you look at it, as good fun, but yes, you put any group together, 5 males, there's always a little bit of healthy competition, and that's good fun. And certainly with Mako Gold, there was a little bit of psychological jousting, and that was to go back. I think the first time IMARC, so Mines and Money, IMARC ran the pitch battle series, I won that, and then the following year Mako Gold won it. So we were having a bit of a chat about that. But look, it was. And you know who you're up against. I mean, the industry is too small. So it was actually good fun. And I kept reminding myself, it was at the end of the 4th day, I think, in London. And we were standing between the pitchers and the drinks, which is dangerous. So if you, take it seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously, and recognise it is a bit of fun, then I think the audience picks up on that as well, and they can relax a little bit, and I think that's important as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it was as you said, it was the end of the London show on the Thursday, and I think we had, as a head count, 250 people in the room. So certainly the relationship between the judges and the mining companies, and also the mining companies and the mining companies, was one of the core reasons why that worked. So, I mean, let's move on to question 4. So we're going to go to now a crucial part of it. How do you prepare for the pitch, and particularly the questions you're going to receive from the judges?
Well, so if I took a step back, Mike, I mean, a pitch could be, in a conference. It doesn't necessarily need to be to judges. It could be to an audience in a conference. And so I think my answer covers either scenario. I have said it before, I can't emphasize enough, work out the audience, work out why you're there. Well, I'll start again. Why are you presenting? Why are you pitching? What does the company want to achieve out of it? I think is extremely important, because then that will help work out, well, what I want to say. Then you've got to consider the audience and what do they want to hear, and hopefully what I want to say aligns with what they want to hear. And then normally most people are right across, their projects, and then it's just a matter of compiling the pitch according to what I want to say and what you think and you hope they want to hear. And they hearing can be either the audience or, in London, the judges. And you, again, just tailor. So I often think about what I'm going to say, but I often leave till quite late, in fact, often the night before, to pare back to what I actually want to say. And the reason I do that is the market might have moved, Australian gold prices might have spiked. There might have been something that you heard from a presenter the day before that you could leverage off. There might have been a Rick Rule comment from the day before that you could work into your speech. So I do tend to have a general template, but finalise it really only the night before.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we discussed just in the build-up at PDAC about arranging this webinar, and you said, look, you know, there's actually a White Rock in Vancouver. So, I mean, it's very much that tailored approach. I mean, is that right? Is it in Vancouver or British Columbia? But you said, you know, people will actually come up to you and ask questions. So it's really about being prepared and covering off. I mean, your two key projects, obviously in Alaska and New South Wales. But again, I guess it goes back to that point of being prepared, right?
That's right. So I was manning a booth, and people in Vancouver would come up as if they knew White Rock quite well, and we're only one of a few ASX companies in Vancouver in January. And yeah, exactly. It turned out that White Rock is an affluent suburb of Vancouver, very near the US border. And I learnt that you needed to be rich and old to live there. And I worked that into my talk, and except that I said that I'm one of them and it's not rich. And again, so I knew that, you know, there was a Vancouver audience in general, a lot of high net worths, you know, mums and dads, superannuation fund. Everyone had heard of White Rock, or most people had heard of White Rock as a suburb. So again, you know, I only knew that the day before I actually gave the talk, and so that just gave it a bit of humanness, I guess, a human element to a pitch.
Yeah, we've got another question, Matt, from Sally. From she hasn't actually put her address, but Sally, and she's asked, have you been caught off guard by a question? So maybe this question hopefully won't catch you off guard, but have you been caught off guard by a question from a judge, or maybe let's grow that conversation into a meeting as well? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the short answer. Yes, you don't know what's going to come at you. I guess I did a bit of media training in a previous lifetime. I worked for Western Mining, and I actually had involved in an incident where I had to deal with the media every day. And I guess I learned a couple of things. If you get a question that you don't know the answer to, just say you don't know the answer. I see too many people either make it up on the go, and it goes pretty pear-shaped pretty quickly, or they answer the question they wished they were asked rather than the question they were asked, you know, the typical politician's response. So I do tend, if I can answer the question, I will. If it's a curved ball, I will often say, that's a good question, and I only say that to buy myself time to think about the answer without jumping straight into the answer. But absolutely, you need to be prepared for the unexpected, and I just try and play with a straight bat.
Yeah, I think transparency is crucial. I mean, I think, you know, people are often, as investors, they're looking at projects and trying to work out how they de-risk it, and where, you know, that comes across from the CEO management team will be one of the top 4 or 5 criteria. When we poll our investors, they always talk about jurisdiction, essentially market cap, money in the bank, what commodity they're in, and always management teams come up. So I think the transparency and the trust in management teams is a huge step to why you get fund managers, investors, and retail investing into projects. Okay, Matt.
That's correct, Mike. As I said, you know, the 3 Ps. One is the projects, but a lot of people, and I think rightly so, look at the people that are handling their money, and people are a good judge of character. I think they can see through the charlatan, you know, the snake oil salesman, and I do think people respond to you know, people just being straight with them. I just work on that philosophy.
Okay, we've got another question. Bob from Buffalo. We've got, how would you pitch a new mining company making their first pitch?
Yeah, good question, Bob. So again, I come back to the 3 Ps. You know, what are the projects that the new mining company has? I think that's got to be the starting point. You know, are the projects old ones that are being revitalised? Are they brand new greenfields? Is it a mining company that's just floated with assets? So I think, you know, the projects underpin the company. I would then move to the people, the board, and then why someone should invest in this new mining company. I think, there are other ways of answering Bob's question. I guess as a mining engineer, I do try and keep it simple, and those 3 Ps, I think, are not a bad way of starting off answering Bob's question. I won't say it's the be all and end all, but it's not a bad way of starting to put together your pitch by looking at the projects that you're going to talk about, the people that are going to manage the projects and the money, and then why someone should put their money into that company.
Thanks, Matt. I hope that answers your question, Bob. The final question we'll move on to: what was the commercial value of winning the pitch battle in London?
Look, so it's probably more. I can't put a dollar figure. I mean, did White Rock's share price go up after that? No, disappointingly. But it was London, and we're listed on the ASX. But what I did get out of it, obviously, one is this opportunity. But I ended up having direct personal email conversations with Rick Rule, who runs Sprott, which is I don't know how many $1 billion series of funds out of North America. So if nothing else, I was really happy to have got his attention, given that White Rock has only got a market cap of 10 million and he runs something like a $10 billion fund. So that was a benefit in itself. That the judges liked the pitch was a nice endorsement of the strategy that we were pitching. You never quite know whether you're on the right track. So to have, high-powered fund managers liking the story, I think is a nice endorsement, because you will always get people that have different opinions. So I think those 2 points alone certainly made it enjoyable and worthwhile.
Good. I'm glad you've had some more developed, mature conversations out of it. That's excellent here. We're almost there now, Matt. We're coming to the last few minutes. So I want to say a big thank you to you for your insightful conversation and some of the learning points that hopefully our audience can take away. You'll be joining us in my home city in Hong Kong in 3 weeks today, actually, for Minds and Money Hong Kong. Do you want to just tell us a quick bit about what you'll be doing in Hong Kong?
Sure. So we've got a couple of major shareholders. I critically around conferences, I build in meetings, so that is an essential part of me going there. Minds and Money Hong Kong, and I have been quoted, and it's true, this will be, if there's one conference I go to a year anywhere in the world, it's the Hong Kong Minds and Money, and that's not just with this hat on. I was previously an MD of another company, and I've learned to have a booth as a meeting place and for people to come and talk and meet me and receive hard copies. I present on the first day, and I also chair a roundtable, so I get fully engaged. I also wander to meet other exhibitors, and obviously there's the networking as well. So I put all of that together, and it's certainly been I use this term, it's certainly been a good hunting ground for me, meeting other companies and certainly investors and potential investors.
Thanks for that, Matt. We're looking forward to welcoming you again in Hong Kong, as I say, only a few weeks away. So thank you for your participation today. I'd like to just close down a little bit about Minds and Money. So we're talking about the pitch battles. We have got one space left for those pitch battles in Minds and Money Asia. So if you would like to nominate using some of Matt's tips, please let us know. There's a number of ways you can nominate through the website. Of course, you don't need to just attend to have a pitch battle. We still have registrations open for the event. We're expecting 1,000+ people, leading miners, leading investors from around the world, with a great networking program, including the Minds and Money Outstanding Achievement Awards, which is at the Shangri-La, the island Shangri-La this year. We've also got welcome drink sponsor by Argonaut, our gold sponsors and brokers. So there's plenty of ways to get involved in the event this year. So please let us know if you're keen to do that. We'll be running more webinars as well throughout the year, so stay tuned for updates. And do let us know as well. Please feel free to nominate a topic or a speaker you'd like to hear from, and we'll try to engage them and get them involved. So, final thing, thanks Matt for being involved.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's been good to chat, and hopefully the audience have got some benefit out of our chat together.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you at Minds and Money Asia in 3 weeks' time. Cheers.
Thank you.